Hi there and welcome. My name is Michael Kentenich and I'm a Microsoft Technical Trainer. In this video, I will talk about how the Microsoft Authentication Library, the MSAL, enables developers to acquire tokens from the Microsoft Identity Platform to authenticate users and access secured web APIs. In this video, I will go and explain the benefits of using the MSAL and the application types and scenarios it supports. We will talk about how to instantiate both a public and a confidential client app in code, and how to create an app that retrieves a token by using the MSAL.NET library. You want to write a single-page app in JavaScript that leverages the Microsoft Identity Platform to get standardized access to Azure resource and services, or maybe an API you manage. The Microsoft Authentication Library for JavaScript, the MSAL.js, lets JavaScript applications on the client or server side authenticate users with Entra ID for work and school accounts, Microsoft personal accounts, and social identity providers, such as Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, and more, even through the Azure AD B2C service. It also lets your app get tokens to access Microsoft Cloud services like the Microsoft Graph. You don't have to use the OAuth libraries or implement the protocol in your application. Instead, use the MSAL.js, which to your benefit acquires token for a user or for an application. It keeps a token cache and renews tokens for you before they expire. You don't have to deal with token expiration yourself. And it helps you fixing your app by showing meaningful exceptions, logging, and telemetry, and more. You want to do the same for Java, Python, Angular, React? There's an MSAL for these too. Check out Microsoft Learn for details on the supported platforms and frameworks. The Microsoft Authentication Library offers various authorization grants and related token flows that different application types and scenarios can use. This is a summary table, but you should also look at the documentation on Microsoft Learn to get all the full details on which flow to use for which use case if you're not familiar with the topic already. I'd like to highlight two different flows for you in this next demo. And I always find that a super easy way to start with this is look at an app registration object in your Entra ID tenant. This is what I'm doing right now. So in my Entra ID tenant, I have the Azure portal navigated to this specific one that I already have. And this application registration means it provides an identity for an application. That application can be hosted on Azure, but it can also be hosted elsewhere. But what it allows us to do is to either let a user authenticate on behalf of them in the Entra ID tenant, or let the application itself authenticate and then get access to a key vault or database or any other Azure resource or APIs. So what I really like about this, so we offer the so-called quick start. When you open up the quick start, it will ask you a couple of questions. So what type of application are you building? And you have four main categories that you can check. And all of these links eventually get you back to Microsoft Learn. So you have all kinds of visual and examples support in there that will help you build your application. So I would like to start off with the so-called authorization code flow. For this one, there are a couple of examples, but I will start off with a single page application, i.e. an SPA. That would be an application that runs in a browser, which is a public client, meaning we don't trust it with any secret. So we don't want to share the secret of a certificate or a password with this kind of client. So what can we do with this? I click start. Then I select the platform I want to work with. Let's say for this one, I want to use JavaScript. And what it gives you is quick start that comes also from Microsoft Learn, but you can access this in here from the Azure portal. And it's super cool because on one hand, it gives you a demo example in the code that not only allows you to just click a button and it will pre-configure your app registration to make this local application then work with this specific identity. So it will use the correct direct URI and type of that. Then you can download a code sample which already has some configuration values embedded, so it knows how to access this app ID. It knows the identities and all these different things. I don't want to go that far right now, but you can try this out. It gives you all the details. What I want to highlight here is how that actually works. And in here, we can see this basic flow. On the left-hand side, our JavaScript SPA. On the right-hand side, the Microsoft Identity Platform. And as an example of any API that our JavaScript SPA would like to work with, we have the Microsoft Graph API. But that doesn't have to be the Graph API. It can be any other API or even a resource. It is just an example on how do we get access to this using the Microsoft Identity Platform, and for that also, in this specific case, the MCell for JavaScript. So what happens here? The application that you create in this tutorial here enables a JavaScript SPA to query the Microsoft Graph API, just as I said, as an example. And it does this by acquiring a security token first, and that security token is first coming from an authorization or using an authorization code, and that comes from the Microsoft Identity Platform. So after a user signs in with their credentials, an access token is requested and then added to HTTP request in the authorization header. And then token acquisition and renewal are handled completely by that Microsoft Authentication Library for JavaScript, the MCell.js. So the authorization code is really just saying, okay, I know your credentials, your user seems to be a fine user, so then we acquire on behalf of that user at the token endpoint the access token. The Microsoft Identity Platform provides back the access token, also with refresh tokens already. And then the JavaScript application will use this in an HTTP request to access the API, and then we get a response that will be sent directly to JavaScript. So super awesome, simple. You have a good understanding, hopefully, by this what that means. If you don't have all the details yet, you can still go in and find here the link to the full tutorial and walk through this step by step with even some more information about it. Okay, so that was authorization code. Now, let's go back to our overview here. I get to switch back and forth. So now what happens if we want to have the application itself get permissions to different resources and APIs and no logged in user present? That could be an application that runs in the background somewhere, a so-called daemon application. So let's start with this example and have a look what is different here. So same thing here. So you just pick whatever you want. Let's just say for this one, we pick now the .NET Core console, and but you can also pick any of the others. It gives you information. Make sure, because sometimes like this one here, it does not necessarily use the latest version of the SDK, but you can upgrade it. And of course, you will find on Microsoft Learn examples also for the higher versions. It's the same thing like before. It makes the changes for you. If you want to run that application, you don't want to download this, but we want to focus right now on the flow itself. So the flow this time looks a bit different, right? So because we don't have a user involved. So instead of using a delegated permission set for the user, logged in user, we use this application's own identity. And the authentication flow in this case is known as the client credentials OAuth flow. So it's all backed by that standard mechanism and protocol. Now, what we're seeing here, so the application on its own behalf will start on, and it either has it has its own identity, so it will log in, will get an access token, and then can use this access token, because in the app registry, I can define what kind of rights will it have for a specific API. In this case, again, as an example, we take Microsoft Graph API. So by default, everyone has the user read profile. permissions, but we can grant more. We can grant more access to individual Microsoft Graph functionality, or we could also have the Key Vault API in here so that my application gets access to certain secrets or keys that are listed and stored in a Key Vault. So, but it's in general the same thing. Gets you all the information here. What kind of library it's using. This time, of course, is the mcell.net, and that is used to request a token on the identity's own, on the application's own identity. So yeah, if you want to play around with this, so that's really cool. Starting point. If you need more information, most of these links will get you to Microsoft Learn anyway. But on Microsoft Learn, if you look for Microsoft Identity Platform or the mcell directly, depending on what you're interested in, you find a ton of examples. That is also the full table that we saw on a slide before with individual options. So let's say I want to learn more about client credentials, and it talks about different things like you want to use application secrets, or you want to use instead certificates. How do you need to set your application registration up, and how do you use this in code? Tons of material in here with individual links to either the protocols or more generic information, or individual examples, including samples stored on different GitHub repositories or directly on Microsoft Learn. So yeah, try it out and find the best working flow for you. The mcell defines two types of clients: public clients and confidential clients. Public client applications are those that run on devices such as a desktop, browserless APIs, mobile or client-side browser apps. They're not trustworthy to store application secrets securely, as they can only access web APIs on behalf of the user. If the source or compiled bytecode of an app is sent anywhere where it can be viewed, decompiled, or analyzed by untrusted parties, it's a public client. Since they can also only support public client flows and can't keep secrets that are set at configuration time, they can't have client secrets. Client applications that run on servers are confidential, such as web apps, web API apps, or service daemon apps can securely store configuration time secrets that prove their identity. They are hard to access by users or attackers, so they are considered safe. The client ID is visible through the web browser, but the secret is only sent in the back channel and never exposed directly. In this video, I explained the benefits of using mcell and the client types and scenarios it supports. I showed you how to instantiate both a public and a confidential client app from code, and how to create an app that retrieves a token by using the mcell.net. So congratulations on learning how to implement authentication using the Microsoft Authentication Library. By mastering authentication techniques, you're equipped to secure your applications and control access to sensitive resources effectively. With the Microsoft Authentication Library, empower your applications with robust authentication mechanisms and elevate your security standards effortlessly. Thanks for watching. Keep on learning.